welcome. Happy Monday. We are starting a new week and we are starting a new book, the book of Esther. And I know many of us have already read the story of Esther. It is considered like one of those romance slash deliverance stories. I think more deliverance. The romance part was like, well, who wants to make it romantic? They can. But I think it's more story of deliverance of God's people once again. And yesterday I reviewed the book of Nehemiah from through all the 13 chapters, and now let's moving on. Now the time of Esther and the time of Nehemiah, I believe they are concurring because um that is a time when the Jews were in captivity. When you heard mention Hezekiah came out of the palace of Shushan, I think we're going to hear about that again here in Esther. So let's see. Okay, chapter 1. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus, this is Ahasuerus, which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia, over 127 over 107 and 20, which is the same, provinces. That in those days, when that the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the palace. Again, here we go. So it's the same palace which Nehemiah came out of. And I believe it's the same king. If I'm not sure, I believe he was the same king that sent Nehemiah back to Judah. Okay, verse 3. In the third year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces being before him. When he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty many days, even 180 days. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan the palace, both unto great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white, green, and blue hangings, fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver rings and pillars of marble. The beds were of gold and silver upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black marble. That sounds magnificent. Almost reminds me of some of the descriptions of Solomon's palace. So this was no small feat. It was a big festival. And he invited the people, a great feast for all of the, was it all of the people or just the ones who were in his kingdom? And let's see what happens next. Verse 7. And they gave them drink in vessels of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law, none did compel. For so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should do according to every man's pleasure. So he was not forcing anyone. Very good. Good leader so far. Verse 9. Also, Vashti or Vashti, the queen, made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, and Abagtha, Zitha, and Carcass, the 7 chamberlains that served in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti, the queen, before the king with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look on. Okay. Wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, who is deceived thereby is not wise. So we're looking at a king here. Maybe he was wise when he was sober, but in his intoxicated state, not wise. You don't bring your wife before people to look upon her. Well, I guess she was one of many, mostly. I don't know. Even self. So he had kind of lost it. Okay, verse 12. But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Pride? I think so. Verse 13. Then the king said to the wise men which knew the times, for so was the king's manner toward all that knew law and judgment, And the next unto him was Karshina, Shitha, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the seven princes of Persia and Media. So this is a time when Persia and Media are reigning, and I believe they took over Babylon as well. So all of the captives from all the Jews that were captured from Jerusalem are all in this area or this region. Okay, all right. Which saw the king's face and which sat the first in the kingdom. Verse 15. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to law? Because she has not performed the commandment of the king Ahasuerus by the chamberlains. Now check this out. It's not the king who is asking this. It's his chamberlains. It's his people in charge because, not his chamberlains, but his officers in charge who think that, you know what, she's kind of outstepping her bounds. I'm going to say this as any female, as any wife, and your drunken husband is having his time with his boys and calls you to parade in front of them, ditto. I'm not going. And I'm going to tell you straight up, get lost. No, no, that's not what you do with your wife. That's not what you do. But let's see what happens. So they want to punish her for being a strong woman. I guess there was no women to live back then. It was women, do what you're told. And there are some places in this world today still where that is the law. Women, do as you are told. Okay, so Vashti started the she started the Women's Lib organization way back then. Okay, verse 16. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes when it shall be reported. The king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not. Likewise shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of the deed of the queen, thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. So they're looking to put down this women's lib right quick, fast, and in a hurry before it even gets to be out of control. Okay, now I'm going to say this. There is a biblical verse, wives, obey your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. Now, how much would you love your wife if you want to parade her in front of sick-minded, drunken men, including yourself? But she's married to you, so hey, she knows what she had to do. Anyway, but you and your friends are not of sound mind under the influence of the red wine in the glass, and you are calling her as though she is, you know what, that reminds me of a pole dancer in a club. She is not in a club. She's your wife. What are you doing? But they are upset because they're the men. Hey, we said come and you ought to come. Now, women, wives, obey your husbands. That is the law, but not when it goes against God's law. Now, I don't know if Vashti was operating on that mode, but whatever mode she was on, Vashti was saying, I'm not having that. And maybe she had to have done it before. Maybe she did it times before. Who knows? But this time she said, you know what? I had enough with it. I'm not doing it. And this, you know, when men are drunken, well, how they behave. When people are drunken, how they behave. And they're going to be Googling and ogling and acting disgusting. And that's what you want for your wife? She was in her place. And I would say this, I would have done that time and time again. I mightn't even have had the second time to do it, because the first time, that was it. But that was not right what he was doing. And I believe she had a right to refuse. Okay, verse 19. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, that it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. You see, they're starting to try to put that she's no good anymore because she didn't come before the queen. So let's find something who's better than her. And when the king's decree which he shall make shall be published throughout all his empire, for it is great, All the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small. Now, it does say, the Bible says, wives, obey your husbands in the Lord. In the Lord. So if they are outside of God's will, no, no, no. Your husband cannot be asking you to come and parade before he and his drunken friends. You are not supposed to do that. Okay. Verse 21, and the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the king did according to the word of Memucan. Of course it's going to please him. His mind already messed up with wine. Verse 22, for he sent letters into all the king's provinces, into every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. Now I'm going to say this again. Wives should obey their husbands in the Lord. That's the next, that's the end, that's the entire verse, in the Lord. If your husband is outside of God's will, he's going to ask to do some things, ask you to do some things, and in your mind and heart, if you know it's against God's will, you are not held to do it by God. Maybe the law, the state law might say, yes, you have to, and you still have an option to say, no, it's against God's bidding. So that's the end of Esther chapter 1. And I think that Vashti was well in her place to tell her drunken husband no, that she will not be parading before him and his friends. Not today. So they're going to teach her a lesson. And the other women, give them a warning. Your husband rules over you. And God did put the man above the woman, but he has a responsibility to love his wife. You do not love your wife like that. No. So that's the end of our first reading. But you know what? Everything works together for good, and God always has a plan. So sometimes we think that things are the worst that's happening in our lives, and it's so unfortunate. What we may see as a calamity may just end up being a blessing that God has put together for his will to be performed. So we will hear more about Esther and what goes on. We haven't heard about Esther yet. That's just the introduction. And again, this coincides at the same time with Nehemiah, Ezra, all of those people, because I know I heard a name mentioned in the list before, and we're going to hear that name here too in Esther. So that's it for today. Thank you all for listening. Keep on hearing God's word so our faith can grow. Take care. Bye.